So Dark Moon Races is almost here, adding a bunch of new cards to Constructed Hearthstone that will also be added to Duels. And that's not all that's getting added to Duels. A big mid-season update I wanted to showcase here a little bit. All the hero powers and signature treasures for this season of Duels will be unlocked starting tomorrow, January 21st. And as you can see, there are a ton here. If you didn't catch this news post, I'll link that in the description below. And originally I was going to talk about all these cards, but there are so many, and I don't think anybody wants to watch an hour and a half video discussing these in great detail, or maybe a few of you do, but most don't. So instead, I'm going to spotlight what I think are the 10 coolest new designs. Not necessarily the strongest cards that are being added, but some of the most interesting that will probably have some competitive intrigue indeed, but the ones I think are going to do the coolest things and be the most fun, essentially, to try out and play with in Duels and get me the most excited about the game mode. So that said, we're going to talk about these in no particular order, starting off with Shadow Word Void, which is a new 3-mana signature treasure spell for Priest. It will destroy a minion, so some nice cheap single target removal, and then it will summon 0/1 Void Fiends equal to its health. And if you haven't yet seen a Void Fiend, I'm going to pop it up here on screen. Essentially, this is a little 0/1 minion that's going to steal health from your opponent. That means if you destroy, say, a 5/5 with Shadow Word Void, you're going to summon 5 0/1s that all steal a health from your opponent, so therefore they will all be 5 0/2s. And if your opponent can't readily resolve those Void Fiends, well, you're going to steal another 5 health from your opponent, and it's just going to start stacking. Then they'd be 0/3s. Maybe they deal with 1 or 2 of them, but you get a few left, and they start growing. And if you have any sort of buffs or heals on these minions, you could try to feed into this army of Void Fiends over time that's just too hard for your opponent to deal with, and then eventually you just suck all the life out of your opponent before they can finish all your Void Fiends. And notably, I'm not spotlighting here, but there's also a hero power for 2 mana that will summon you an extra Void Fiend, so you can build a Void Fiend synergy deck and just play off of the ability to steal your opponent's health. And I think that's so cool. These just little, unassuming 0/1s that don't seem threatening, but if you don't deal with them, watch out, you're dead. All right, so next up is Humble Blessings for Paladin, a new signature treasure. It's 5 mana, and it changes the attack, health, and cost, importantly, of all your minions to 3 for the rest of the game. So this is basically a game state aura, so anytime a card gets in your hand that's a minion, it's going to cost 3 mana, which means, if you have some big fat 10 drops and 8 drops, they're going to be 3 mana. They're going to be 3/3s as well. So, if they're good because of their stats, that's not that exciting. But if they're good because of onboard effects, like big death rattles, say like a 3-mana 3/3 Tyrion, for instance, pretty sick because you get a weapon as well, right? You get the nice death rattle. You get like a Plague Proto-Drake, you're getting a 7-drop out of your 3-drop death rattle. And you can start to realize why this is really, really cool. Not to mention, of course, if you have small minions, say Silverhand Recruits, then those Silverhand Recruits are automatically going to get popped out as 3/3s when you summon them instead of 1/1s. So there are 2 different directions to interact with Humble Blessings here, which could make for a really interesting deck. Will it always be good? No, sometimes certain minions might get worse if they're all about stat upside, or they might just stay kind of roughly the same efficiency but not have quite that the big punch they'd have otherwise as a big 8/8 or something. But the cool thing is you could build your deck in a certain way and draft in a certain way to really support this. You don't want to go too hard into it because you won't always have Humble Blessings in hand. This isn't just a passive. You'd have to cast this. So there might be instances where you need your deck to work without it. But when you get it, it could be a total home run. So I am worried about the consistency of this one. I don't know if it'll be especially good, but I think it's so cool from a deck building and from a game plan sort of standpoint where you have to plan this and kind of play towards it, that I really, really like this design, even if it's not super strong. So next up here, let's talk about a hero power. This one's for Druid. It's called Harvest Time, 2 mana. It destroys a minion, and then it summons 2/2/2 treants for that minion's owner. So a couple different ways to use this one. You could use it to kill your opponent's giant kill mocks or whatever it might be, turning that 20/20 into a couple meager 2/2s. So you can't deal with the 20/20 because Druid doesn't have great single target removal. Who cares? You got your hero power. You can chip away at some 2/2s. Those aren't a big deal. And I think that's great, giving Druid this awesome tool to remove stuff. It won't always be good. Sometimes they'll be like, oh man, that's a 3/3. I don't want to turn that into 2/2s. My hero power is just not going to be very good this turn. But if you build your deck in a certain way, you could also use this on your own minions very favorably. So you could have things like Death Rattle eggs. You got a 0/2 egg with a 4/4 inside of it. Well, kill off that egg. You get the 4/4 and you get 2 bonus 2/2s as well for very little actual downside. So if you build your deck with a bunch of little 1/1s or Death Rattle synergy things, Harvest Time could get dual utility both aggressively against your opponent and for your own cards as well. And that's awesome. I think that's really, really cool. And it gives Druid a different line of play to work with as well. So I'm really excited to try out different deck builds for Harvest Time here. All right, so now let's move over to the Ember Caster for Mage. It's a super cool looking dude. I mean, that's like one of the coolest characters I've seen in Hearthstone ever. He's a 5-mana 4/5, and he's got Spell Burst. Add 3 copies of the spell to your hand. So a ridiculous value return here for Ember Caster. And yeah, you got to pay 5 mana, but you can get spells back. And guess what? Spells and duels are often treasures, which means this guy can basically turn 1 treasure into 4 total treasures, 3 extra treasures. So you thought you had 1 treasure in your deck? No, actually, you have 4 of that treasure in your deck. And there's some completely bonkers stuff too. Like you could banana split this guy. Spell Burst, remember, goes off after the spell has been cast. So you would put a couple new Ember Casters on board that still have Spell Burst active. If those stick around, you could start chaining it like crazy. There's also, you don't have to go for treasures. Just like, hey, in Arcane Missiles, on an empty board on turn 6, like, boom, that's, 12 total damage you might be able to pull off throughout the course of the game. Or just, Frostbolts or Polymorphs, whatever you think you might need, this guy can adapt to your game plan. Need to freeze face because it's Demon Hunter? Use Frostbolt. Frostbolt them the 3 turns after that too. Just keep them completely locked down thanks to your Ember Caster. So it seems like this guy can create some really cool scenarios, and the kind of crazy potential with treasures is there. So I am very excited to pull off some bonkers stuff with Ember Caster. All right, so moving on to another hero power, this time for Warlock with Social Studies, great name. And it's passive. When you play a card that generates soul fragments, summon a Flame Imp. And note that this is not per soul fragment. This is just when you play the cards. You're not getting like 2 Flame Imps off of a single Spirit Jailer. But you are getting a Flame Imp off of a Spirit Jailer, which is an insane turn 1 tempo play. And if you build your deck with a ton of soul fragment shuffles, you're getting a lot of extra minions over the course of a game for free, which can really help you keep up. And soul fragments aren't always the fastest tempo cards. So the ability to get extra stuff while still developing that soul fragment advantage, I think, is a really big deal. And I'm really excited to try soul fragments, which is already a pretty good package for duels. I think this could really help it get over the hump as like a super package. If you don't want to have to play Discard Warlock, like obviously that's still probably going to be better, and people will feel compelled to play Discard Warlock. But I think this could be a lot of fun, just swarming people with Flame Imps. Just be careful, I think, with your School Spirits based on the wording of this one. It's not after you play a card, so you might kill your Flame Imp with your School Spirits. Somebody chime in here who knows the order of operations on this one perfectly. Next up here is a cool card for Mage. It is Yogg, but it's a cheap Yogg. This is Yogg-tastic Tasties. Not gonna lie, I would totally eat those. No surprise there. It's a 10-mana spell, and it spins the wheel of Yogg-Saron, and it improves over the course of your run, which we haven't talked about yet, but there's a bunch of these cards that improve over the course of your run. I'm assuming every game the number just goes up, so this will cost 1 less, then 2 less, then 3 less. So near the middle or end of a run, this will be a very cheap way to get a Yogg-Saron on board. And if we're not a Yogg-Saron, but getting Yogg's wheel in play, I should specify, which is exactly what I want to talk about, by the way. And that's really, really cool, right? It's just Yogg's a great play. Playing Yogg for even less mana means you can kind of recover afterwards or redevelop something. But I did want to talk about, in particular, Devouring Hunger for Yogg-Saron. If I can here just real quickly pull this on screen. Devouring Hunger destroys all other minions, then gains their attack and health. But without Yogg itself, since this is a spell and not a minion, I do not know how this will work. I don't know if it'll just summon nothing, or maybe like an amalgam with those stats, or maybe just Yogg will just magically appear. I don't know exactly how that one's going to go off, but of course the rest of these should work just fine, and many of them will be very powerful plays, particularly when they're very affordable plays. So, hey, more Yogg action, sign me up. I love Yogg. It's fun. It's stupid. And the artwork on these is really, really funny. All right, so this one's pretty simple, but I just really like the elegance of it. Stormcatcher, you can't be overloaded. And that's really cool. Like, overload is a mechanic. It's like never really seemed all that good. How do you make it work? Just doesn't happen. You just don't get overloaded. So basically a lot of cards with these, seemingly powerful upsides are just straight up. They just get the bonus without the penalty down the road, which I think could allow you to run a lot of different sets of cards and do some cool things. Like, suddenly is Earth Elemental like a really good card in a Stormcatcher deck? I don't know, but I'm really excited to find out. I think it's really cool that you just don't have to worry about that downside or risk at all. So there might be some great options for cards that normally wouldn't make a lot of sense that just completely own with Stormcatcher builds. And I'm going to try it out. Okay, so this is Juris Doom, a dual class signature treasure for Priest and Warlock. 4 mana 4/4. Whenever your health changes on your turn, summon a copy of this minion. So really neat idea here. Now, keep in mind that Priest and Warlock don't always have their default hero powers in duels, or don't usually. So they don't always have like life tap to damage yourself as Warlock. Priest does have some heal options, of course. But there are still plenty of cards available in the pools, and pretty affordable cards at that will change your health on your turn. So I think achieving this won't maybe be as easy as it would be in standard, but still very, very achievable to actually proc this effect. And when you do proc it, to start, you're getting 2 4/4s for 4 mana. That's awesome, but keep in mind, these double on themselves. So if you cast 2 cards or effects that change your health, you're going to go from 1 to 2, and then from 2 to 4, and you're going to get 4 4/4s. You cast a third effect, boom, you got a full board of Juris Dooms. And the crazy thing is, your opponent can't clear all of them. Guess what? You just reload and you do it again next turn. It's got a bit of that like Grimmer Patron feel, which can sometimes snowball in duels, where it's just like, man, I got the Grimmer Patron advantage. They couldn't deal with it, and now I'm just going to summon Grimmer Patrons until the day I die, or until the day they die, more specifically. And the cool thing about Juris is you control that more than Grimmer Patrons. They're kind of passive, happening at the end of turn. Juris, you're controlling when it happens. It still is copying buffs and effects, so you can buff this up and go crazy with it. It just feels like a really, really fun card to try to snowball off of. So I think you'll see some games won on the back of just obscene Juris Doom boards in the mid game. So for this one, I don't know if I should say it's one of the coolest cards, or do things. It's kind of scary, but nonetheless, I'm excited to see what it's all about. Magnetic Mind's a warrior hero power. It reads, at the end of your turn, shuffle a bomb into your opponent's deck if you have any armor. So, theoretically, you can start shuffling a ton of bombs into your opponent's deck. You can have additional bomb cards as well, and just blow them up if they're trying to draw a ton of cards. I would love to do that for Warlocks, for instance, who keep drawing 1 million cards off of their hero powers and Malchezaar's Imps and such. And that's exactly why I want this card. Demon Hunter 2 draws a ton of cards. So this could be a cool way to counter that. Now, keep in mind, it may not be that easy to get armor with this hero power, because normally it's your hero power that's giving you armor for Warrior in both duels and otherwise. And you won't have that. So you're going to have cards that give you armor instead. But there are cool things like Armor Vendor being added that could help set up armor. And if you do manage to keep your opponent's board in check, once you get that armor, they may not really be able to chip it down well. You just occasionally sort of replenish your armor to make sure this is still going off. And, 5-10 turns in the game, they're going to have a lot of bombs to deal with. Now, you can't forego a game plan. You're still going to have to do more than just bombs, I think. Although you could just try to play like a hyper control, just deny everything until the bombs kill them game plan. But this one's really fun to beat Cthulhu meta, Warlock meta, Demon Hunter meta. So I'm very, very excited to try this out. And then finally here, my last card, the Favored Racer, a 4 mana 3/3 with a battle cry. Cast 1 random blessing on this minion. And this is another one that improves throughout the course of the run. So that's going to go from 1 blessing to 2 blessings to 5 blessings, etc., and so on. And that's awesome. And if you look at the blessing cards in Hearthstone, there's of course like Blessing of Kings probably comes to mind first. I had this pulled up and now it's gone. There's like Blessing of Wisdom. There's also Blessing of Authority to make like this an enormous minion. I think you'll probably see Pharaoh's Blessing in the pool as well, which could make this just ridiculous with Divine Shield and Taunt. I don't know exactly which cards will be in here. I don't think Druid's Blessing of the Ancients will be, but hey, who knows? They could surprise us. And what that means is this is going to be a huge minion when you play it on turn 4. It's just going to be a big pile of stats. Even the first time you play it, you might just get like a Blessing of Might and it's a 6/3, but that's not like crazy awful. And then by the time you get to the 3rd, 4th, 5th game, if this scales linearly per game, as I suspect it will, then this guy's just going to have a pile of stuff. I mean, Blessing of Wisdom's maybe your low roll, but even then, hey, if it sticks around, you get to draw some cards off of it. Hey, that's a big bonus too. So I just can't wait to see how nuts this thing goes. You get this into like a 10-12 win run. Is it going to cast 12 blessings on itself? I don't know, but it's just going to be like a 20-20 or a 30-30 on turn 4. And I don't know if that's good for the game, but I'm excited to see it. So folks, there you go. Those are my favorite, the coolest, the most interesting and fun new things being added to Duels. I'm sure some of you will have your own favorites. So share that in the comments. I want to hear what you guys are most excited about. Maybe you really like Demonizer or the green Tortolan shell because you're a big Mario Kart fan. Well, share all those thoughts. I'm looking forward to playing Duels. We'll probably focus on standard format for the first day or two with all the new Dark Moon Races cards, but I'm going to hop into Duels pretty soon and try out a lot of this stuff, see how fun it can be. That said, look forward to sharing that on YouTube right here with you. So if you're looking forward to seeing that, of course, subscribe and keep an eye out on all that fun stuff. But until then, thanks much as always for watching. And until next time, game on.